It commented rather sharply of the fact that little or no mention of the chest and its contents had been made, although there seemed no doubt that the gold, it preferred to ignore the fact that part of it was not gold at all but currency, had provided the motive for the murder. The police admit that this gold is missing, one paper said. Then where is it? How much of it was there? Gold is bulky and heavy. Could the murderer have escaped with it, and if so, how? One enterprising journalist had figured that $75,000 in gold, an amount which he seemed to have guessed with uncanny accuracy, would weigh a total of 276 pounds. But on that morning when the Crescent left the inquest and started home, all we knew was that Jim Wellington had won the first round in what might be a fight for his life, and that the Crescent itself had for a time at least been vindicated. All of us saw Helen on the pavement outside. She was with another young woman, both very smartly dressed, and before they got into a car Helen had already lighted a cigarette. There was a man in the car, and he was grinning cheerfully. But I was fortunately the only one who heard what followed. Well, he said, which of them did it? Helen smiled back at him. Can you see them and still believe that Queen Victoria is dead? No verdict. If you ask me, they're all capable of it. Given a reason, of course. Such as? Protection, pride, dignity, how can I tell? What gets me is how you yourself overlook that money, Helen. I didn't know it was there. Then they drove away. Chapter 18. Mrs. Lancaster was buried that same afternoon from a downtown mortuary chapel. Owing to the enormous curiosity aroused by the case, admission to the services was by card only, and for these Margaret had herself made out the list. It was the brief but beautiful service of the Episcopal Church, and we were back home again by 4 o'clock. The funeral had tired Mother, so she went to her room, and thus at last I found time to follow George Talbot's suggestion of a visit to the woodland where he had found the gold piece. For now at last I realized the vital importance of that money, gold or whatever it had been, from the chest. I was too late, however. To my astonishment the woodland was already occupied by 4 strange men, and their procedure was so curious that I stood fascinated, watching them. They had 8 wooden stakes, a spade, a hammer, several long pieces of twine and a can of water which I recognized as Miss Emily's watering can with the sprinkler removed, And what they were doing was to drive the 4 stakes to form a large square, outline it with cord and then divide it in the same manner into 4 smaller squares. Each man then took 1 square and on his hands and knees examined it carefully. Every now and then one of them got up, took the can and poured water onto the ground, while the others watched intently. How long they had been doing this I did not know, nor did I know the purpose of the water until that night, when Herbert Dean enlightened me. Looking to see if the ground had been disturbed, he explained. If it soaks in quickly and there are air bubbles, then they can know that the earth has been dug up recently. And the woodland is obvious, it's sheltered, while the rest is open. But of course they'll not find the gold there. Why not? I asked. Because, my dear young lady, the person who committed that murder and got away with that money is too smart to have buried it there. That conversation took place in Jim Wellington's house late that night. Mother, as if to make up for her inaction the day before, had stayed down until 11, insisting on game after game of cribbage until I had gone nearly wild. Whatever she had feared after the murder, whatever had made her bring Holmes into the house and speak so mysteriously to me, she had been much more calm since she discovered that the gold was gone. But my attempt to sound her out that night met with failure. Mother, I said, summoning all my courage when at last she prepared to go upstairs, don't you think that now you can explain what you said to me on the night of the murder? What in the world are you talking about, Louisa? I was chilled, but I had to go on. You know perfectly well, Mother. I was not to go out of the house, day or night. You said there was a reason. Why should I explain that? It's self-evident. And you did go out. I happen to know that. You deliberately disobeyed me. If anyone had told me that a daughter of mine... Listen, Mother, I said earnestly. It's frightfully important. It may be vital. What was it about spoiling 2 lives? That's certainly not self-evident. She was putting away the cribbage set, and I thought she stood for a minute with her back to me as though she were undecided, if one can imagine Mother being undecided about anything.